India, a continuously breathing civilization, has been home to innumerable ideas for the betterment of not only mankind, but creation as a whole. It has asserted the desire to accept philosophies over ideologies, and therefore didn't produce any ideologues like Marx or Mill, but outlined great men propounding deep philosophical ideas in Bhagwan Mahavir, Buddha, Swami Vivekananda, and many more. And the sages and savants continuously inspired and influenced humanity across history and geography. It is said that an idea is something that you have, and an ideology is something that has you. Therefore, it is our immense pleasure and honor to have advocate and author Mr. J. Sai Deepak, who, with his erudition, shall be articulating various such ideas as our distinguished speaker for today. Though we believe that the concept of left-right stands alien to Indian understanding, the tangible, overwhelming response we receive from the university students confirms that DU stands strong in upholding the freedom of speech and expression left, right, and center. The first half of the event shall involve a welcome address by Honorable Principal Professor Rama, followed by Professor Balram Pani Sir's address. It shall be followed by a discussion on the agenda, academia, ideology, and free speech, involving Advocate Mr. J. Sai Deepak and Professor Rajni Abi Ma'am, moderated by Professor Avanti Bhattacharya Ma'am. An extensive question and answer round shall follow the discussion, providing an opportunity for students to interact and deliberate with Mr. J. Sai Deepak, with the precondition that the conversation from their end must not exceed beyond the civil conduct. And finally, after the vote of thanks and the Kalyan Mantra, we shall move forward with the book signing session for India That Is Bharat, the first book of the Bharat trilogy by Advocate J. Sai Deepak. प्रत्येक कार्यक्रम के पूर्व दीप प्रज्वलन की अनूठी परंपरा भारत में लंबे समय से चली आ रही है। भारतीय संस्कृति की परंपरा को दोहराते हुए मैं माननीय जे साई दीपक जी, एडवोकेट एंड ऑथर, प्रोफेसर बलराम पानी जी, डीन ऑफ कॉलेजेस, दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी, प्रोफेसर रजनी अभी मैम, फॉर्मर मेयर एंड चीफ प्रॉक्टर, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ दिल्ली, प्रोफेसर अवंती मैम, प्रोफेसर, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ ईस्ट एशियन स्टडीज, Dr. Brijesh Rathi sir, Assistant Professor, Chemistry Department, Hansraj College, and Jhandewala Vibhag, Pradhyapak Karya Pramukh. Dr. Gaurav sir, Assistant Professor, Physical Education, Hansraj College, and Jhandewala Vibhag YUVA Convener. और Dr. प्रभांशु जी, Assistant Professor, Department of Hindi, Hansraj College, को दीप प्रज्वलन के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूँ।
या कुंदे दो तुषार हार धवला, या शुभ्र वस्त्रावृता, या वीणा वरदण्ड मण्डितकरा, या श्वेत पद्मासना, या ब्रह्माच्युत शंकर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता, सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा।
It would now be an utmost honor if Honorable Principal Professor Rama would present the bouquet to Advocate J. Sai Deepak.
अपन भाई
Now I request Avanti Ma'am to present the bouquet to Professor Balram Pani, Dean of Colleges, University of Delhi. And finally, it would be my request to Brijesh sir to please present the bouquet to Rajni Amina.
And on the dais, Mr. J. Sai Deepak, sorry, and Mr. Rama Sharma, and Professor Rajni Apte, and my dear colleagues and student friends, we are here to discuss about the the academia, hydrology, and the free speech. Here, you say after a long time, it's a huge gathering. It is nice to see the huge gatherings. It is almost the first time I'm seeing after the corona. It is such a huge gathering for me. And it is really a very energizing one, and definitely you will enjoy the stage because here Mr. J. Sai Prakash Deepak is here, so definitely you will enjoy it. And again, we say because Sai Deepak is very dynamic personality, is very young, and he will think that okay, so whatever I have said, because one of my friends is Jai Prakash. Because Jai Prakash is always, whenever we talk about, it is in my mind, like whenever we talk, my principal, when I was the assistant professor, my principal was Jai Prakash, my friend is Jai Prakash, so that's why whenever we come the word Jai, then Prakash is automatically coming to that way. But whenever another way, I know that Deepak and Prakash both are having the same meaning. It doesn't matter whether it is Sai Prakash or Sai Deepak. The place of Sai Prakash, Sai Deepak is here. And here, just I am coming down to the topic. It is academia. Academia, free speech and ideology means whatever it is. Means whenever we are the teachers and students, means whenever the academy is sure, then academia is there. What is the first of all? What is the meaning of the academia? Means what is the purpose? Means whenever the academy we talk about, there is the interaction between the student and teacher. And here the teacher has the purpose duty to shape the nature, behavior and character of the student. And here itself in the classroom, if I am a teacher and the teacher will be in the interaction, if our nature, behavior and character, it will be shaped and it will be designed because the teacher is there to design and shape your nature, behavior and character to build you a good human being. This is the first duty of the academia. Means okay, we are going for the textbook, but simultaneously we will have to focus on that. Means once they will shape your nature, behavior and character in a particular direction, then definitely you will be a good human being and you will try for your futuristic of your own society and your country. And that is your ideology. Ideology means what? Means ideology means as a student, as a teacher, as a human being, as a citizen of the country, it should be, means whatever I have, it should be dedicated to my country, to my society, my fellow, and my neighbors everywhere. Means this is my ideology. My ideology means I will have to stay on positivity. Nothing else. Means if my surrounding is full of negativity, and it is my ideology that if I will be present somewhere else, then definitely I will spread the positivity throughout the world. It is not only in India. So that's why this is our ideology in our country. This is the country's ideology is that Vasundhaiva Kutumbakam. So therefore, as a student, you should think positive only. Means if there is in your surrounding negative, then you cannot move ahead. Means whenever you will think positive, then definitely you will feel good. And another one, it is a free speech. Yes, free speech is necessary. But there is something, means somewhere, everywhere, there is a limit. And you should know where is your limit. Free speech, it doesn't mean that, means in your house, in your home, means you have the free speech. It doesn't mean that you will disrespect your parents. It's not like that. Means everybody is saying that, okay, this is my fundamental right, that okay, it is my fundamental right, the Constitution has given us the free speech. But simultaneously they are forgetting about the fundamental duties. And whenever we will combine fundamental right and fundamental duties both together, then we will say that, okay, this is what is the real meaning of the free speech. And it doesn't mean that whenever we talk about the free speech, it means you will have to talk about positive thing only and to combine or to integrate your nation together. And we will move together, think together and do together. This is our free speech. Whenever we talk, means whatever is in my mind, I will translate it to my students in my classroom so that they will be integrated in such a manner, whatever they will do, they will do it for the country. Means right now, means I will not take much time because Mr. Sadiq is here and everybody is interested. Means I have seen this many times. Means whenever there is on the TV debate and whenever there is the debate versus Mrs. Sadiq versus OSC and Sadiq. I have enjoyed a lot because means I got very little time, but still then I enjoy. Means whenever there is any debate in TV show, Mr. Sadiq versus any other one, means those who are having some negative mindset. Here it is that this is our ideology. Means you will have to spread the positivity. This is your ideology. And that is the academy. Means you will have to translate your knowledge to your students or those who are your followers. You will have to translate your knowledge in a better way so that they will follow you. That is the academia. The ideology means here I have already told you free speech means always you do whatever you want to do, but you should not do anything which will harm your country or harm your society or harm you or harm your neighbor. This should be in your mind, and then definitely means it is a system because I am from the science, but I don't know much about the politics or law or whatever it is. Whatever knowledge I have, I know unless it is that whenever you give the positive input, then it is bound to have the positive output. And whenever the positive output is there, then our country will be the best. And it was definitely and you have invited me, so that's why I am thankful to you all, and you will enjoy the later on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now welcome Professor Rajni Abhi, who is the current Chief Proctor of Delhi University and is a former Delhi Mayor, to share a few words.
Good evening, students. On the dais, we have J. Sai Deepak, we have Dean of Colleges, Professor Balram Pani, we have Professor Rama, and we have Avanti. First of all, it's so nice to see all these students sitting here. Sometimes we talk about free speech. My speech that day when we were to open the college, that itself became so controversial that I had second thoughts whether to open the colleges or not, because I was getting so many representations to open the colleges, and we were also getting representations not to open the colleges and the repercussions relating to it. But what is our role is we have to think reasonably what is right, and we have to go in that direction. As Balram Paniji also said, we may follow any ideology. We may have as much right of freedom of speech, but as you know, that freedom of speech is also subject to reasonable restrictions. We are talking about the Constitution, the Samvidhan of this country. Although Article 19(1)(a) gives us the freedom of speech and expression, but then we also have to restrict ourselves so that we do not take away somebody else's freedom of speech or expression or any other right. How you want to express yourself, that also is very important. It should be in a manner which is a responsible manner, because we believe in academia. In the introduction, somebody said, anything can be asked provided it is in a civil manner and it is subject to. So I don't feel that anybody is going to get up and throw something or ask questions which are very uncomfortable. Even if they are uncomfortable, we have Deepak ji to answer those questions. Regarding the title of his book, India That Is Bharat, I would want to say one thing, that आप लोगों में से किसका ऐसा नाम है जो हिंदी में और इंग्लिश में अलग अलग लिखा जाता है? कोई है ऐसा? चले यहाँ बैठ। आपका नाम क्या है? गौरव। आप हिंदी में क्या लिखते हैं और इंग्लिश में? तो हम क्यों लिखते हैं भारत और इंडिया? हम क्यों नहीं इंग्लिश में भी भारत ही लिख सकते हैं? और हमारे आर्टिकल 1 में मतलब ऐसा कोई वर्ड नहीं है कि हम भारत को इंग्लिश में ना लिख सके। It is BHARAT. It's very simple to write that also. But ये हमारा colonial mindset है जो हमको कहीं बाहर जाए तो हमें लगता है कि शायद हम भारत कहेंगे तो हम पिछड़े हुए दिखाई देंगे। हमें इससे बाहर निकलना है। हमें गर्व होना चाहिए कि हम भारत की संतान हैं, हम भारत में रहते हैं। और भारत नाम इतना अच्छा है कि आपको पूरे विश्व में समझ आ गया होगा कि अगर किसी देश में लड़ाई चल रही हो और बाहर निकलना हो तो भारत के झंडे को लपेट के बाहर। आजकल तो मुझे नई यूनिवर्सिटी है ना आप लोगों की, व्हाट्सएप यूनिवर्सिटी, उसमें मैसेजेस आ रहे हैं कि कहीं आप बाहर ट्रिप लगाने जाएं तो एक झंडा जरूर साथ लेके जाएं अपने, कभी भी जरूरत पड़ सकती है। और भारत ही एक ऐसा देश है पूरे विश्व में, अगर आप देखें, जिसने आज तक हजारों सालों की हिस्ट्री देख लीजिए आप, आज तक किसी पे कभी अटैक नहीं किया। डिफेंड बहुत बार किया होगा, अटैक कभी नहीं किया। ये हमारी भारत की संस्कृति रही है। बहुत लोगों ने, मुगल हो, अंग्रेज हो, बहुत लोग हो, भारत की स्पिरिट को तोड़ने की कोशिश की है, पर भारत जो एक हमारा देश है वो कभी टूटा नहीं, झुका नहीं। और आज इतने साल के बाद हम सर उठाकर कह सकते हैं कि हम भारतीय हैं और हम गर्व करते हैं इस बात पर। जैसे प्रोफेसर पानी ने कहा, हमारा कोई भी एक्शन हो, कोई भी आइडियोलॉजी हो, पर ध्येय एक होना चाहिए। हम अपने देश के खिलाफ ना जाएं किसी भी सूरत में, किसी भी हाल में। आप कोई भी रास्ता पकड़ लीजिए, परंतु आप भारत के हित के खिलाफ कभी भी कोई काम ना करें। सबसे बड़ी बात यह है, कई लोग समझते हैं कि बहुत पढ़ लिख कर वो बहुत फैशनेबल हो गए और क्रिटिसाइज करना उनका राइट बन जाता है और बहुत अच्छा लगता है क्रिटिसाइज करना, बट ऐसा नहीं है। हम कहीं भी हो, किसी भी फोरम में हो, हम अपने देश के हित में बात करें, देश के हित में काम करें, और जो हमें ये स्वतंत्रता इतनी मुश्किल से और इतने लोगों के बलिदान से मिली है, इसकी कीमत को समझें और एक रिस्पॉन्सिबल सिटीजन बने। आगे जब आप सुनेंगे और मैं बीच में आप लोगों के सवाल भी होंगे और मॉडरेट करते रहेंगे, तो आगे ये सिलसिला चलेगा। आपने मुझे भी यहाँ बुलाया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. J. Sai Deepak, our main speaker, is practicing as an arguing counsel before the High Court of Delhi and the Supreme Court of India. Civil, commercial litigation, constitutional law, and competition law are his primary areas of practice. He is also the author of the best-selling book, India That Is Bharat. We are delighted to have Professor Avanti Bhattacharya as today's moderator. Professor Avanti Bhattacharya is currently a professor at the Department of East Asian Studies, DU. She has been associated with Institute of Defense and Studies and Analysis, and has been teaching about Chinese nationalism, Chinese foreign policy, Sino-Indian relations, and Chinese history. With immense pride and honor, I would request Professor Avanti Bhattacharya to take over the discussion as the moderator.
I could not leave it, but could not even finish it. But still, the pearls of wisdom, I think that is much awaited. And that actually I am very privileged to even be part of this wonderful discussion. And therefore, first I definitely congratulate you for this wonderful book. That is an eye-opener for the academia. And I think that is going to shape our narrative. A narrative which is from the Indian lens, not from the I come from the Chinese studies program, and what we suffer from is our perspectives are driven by the Chinese perspective, Chinese legs, or the Western legs. We do not have Indian legs to understand our country, because as we are very much under the influence of ideology. And I must say here that when we talk about ideology, in the media I have seen also a widely in academia among also the students, it's quite regretful to note that people do not understand the difference between philosophy and ideology. Because ideology has come to take shape only under the impact or under the influence of philosophical tradition, historical experiences, and other. And in fact, if you look into the definition of ideology, it is simply a subjective collection of ideas, and mark the word subjective. When it is subjective, there is no objectivity, and there is whole scope of. And if you look into this word more carefully, ideology, it has actually come from the West. This is clearly a Western product, and its genesis, if you look into the genesis of ideology, it is rooted in the word ism, ISM. And that is heretical movements in the West in the 16th, 17th century. And if you look into more closely into this ism, you will find that these were founded on the principle of what I call othering and bordering. And that is, you create a sense of divide, you promote a sense of identity which is us versus them, us and them category constantly. And that is the, I think we are in that trap. And that is the trap we are, that's why we have forgotten our identity. We constantly decide our fate, our own polity, our own civilization and thoughts from the perspective of us and them, these categories, which is basically not only West categories, these are basically, if you see the rise of ideology, there is a kind of blurring of ideology and ism in the 20th century with the totalitarian movement, totalitarianism. And that's where you see the problem of us and them, and we are in the trap of left and right divide. And this is high time we rescue ourselves, we come out of this divide and retrieve our own identity. And this is something J.S.I. Deepak's book actually does it. Restoring, reconstructing the dharmic tradition. And here when we are talking about the dharmic tradition, it is Sanatana Dharma. It is beyond all isms, it is beyond political, economic, intellectual divide, and therefore we have to, and it's actually, it reminds me when this book actually reminds me of Swami Vivekananda's spiritual quest, who am I? And it's the same, it has the same resonance, this book has the same resonance when he's, with the question, who are we? I think this is the crux, and that is the, I think, most significant, I think, achievement. And I hope, I don't expect, one day probably, and probably Sadiqji would probably enlighten us whether he is optimistic about this change in the academia, moving towards reclaiming our dharmic tradition. Because this book, why it is significant, the first thing that he does is, he makes a distinction between coloniality and colonialism. Very important distinction. And when he says this, he does not mean to reclaim the pristine past, but therefore the most, what I think you do is reconstructing and reorienting ourselves to the dharmic tradition. Restoration, I think, and reconstruction are the essential crux of the path you are showing. And the second thing his book does is the difference between post-colonial school and decolonial school. I think this is something, as you have indicated in the book, that you, this colonial idea you have borrowed from the Latin American, and it has gone in detail the most exciting part of this book is from where he got this idea, how this journey of the book took shape. And therefore, this is something where he connects with, and it's all done academically, logically, and of course, logic, he's very persuasive, not only speaker, but as I see he's more like an academician. He argues the points, and it is logically connecting the difference between post-colonial school and the decolonial school. And then he goes into the most important aspect of his book, which is the crux, is looking into this roots of coloniality, and he traces it not to the age of enlightenment, which generally the idea is the age of reason, but going back to the age of discovery. And he locates this or roots this entire coloniality concept into the biblical ideas and tradition. And there, I think he brings this very fundamental difference between the dharmic tradition, which is not said, which is implicit, those who are acquainted with the dharmic literature, that how the West is a very divisive, creates a kind of divisive idea, and that he brings it with the Cartesian dualism. So I leave it here. I will ask Saideepa to, I was really with the three C's, coloniality, civilization and constitution. How do you see this is going to bring change in the narrative of India?
So first of all, let me thank the student community of Construct College and all of the attendees and participants from various colleges who have come. Regardless of whether you share my ideology or not, thank you for attending this particular session. My request to the organizers is going to be that those who dislike me and those who disagree with me will be given primacy in terms of questions. Throw whatever. I will do so under the conscious belief and hope that you will not be singled out or counted or targeted after you identify yourself as someone who doesn't like me. And that is a word that I take from the student organizers. Second, I think Prakash and Deepak, Paryayavachi hai to koi baat nahi, so it's okay. How are they clear? That's okay. Second, the point that you made about the distinction between ideology and philosophy, exactly the point I wanted to start my points on. So I think it's great that you've got the point, you've got the nub of the issue. So what is the difference between philosophy, which is darshan, and ideology, which is vichardhara? There is a clear, apart from the divisor aspect of it, vichardhara takes a very staunch position that it knows everything, it has answers to everything. Whereas philosophy takes the position that I know the journey, but I don't know the goal. And I'm open to being convinced otherwise. And there's a reason that I chose the title. I had a conscious discussion with the student organizers as to what should be the title of the topic. I said, let's call it Academia, Ideology and Free Speech. Because centers of knowledge have become centers of politics. And that's because of proliferation of ideology as opposed to philosophy. That's the fundamental problem that I'm looking at. In fact, the idea is not to come here and chest thump and say I'm here to support a certain group of people who think like me or who are like-minded. The idea is to try and find out what is it about this particular society and the way we currently structure ourselves that we have pitted ourselves in such an adversarial fashion. You can't get a worse example than the United States of America today. Completely divided, all in the name of left and right. I don't think we should go down that path. And I'm trying to desperately put in whatever efforts I can to stop us from going down that path of destruction. Because I think that country, regardless of the fact that it may be at the top of the world or the next 50 years or a century or whatever it may be, has embarked on a journey of vinash, is my humble opinion. Simply because of extreme wokeism. And therefore, I don't want this particular country, starting from colleges and schools, to go down that path. That's my only goal. You call it Hindutva or whatever thought you wish to call it, I don't have a problem with it. Any labels, I don't give a damn about it. The point is very simple. What started off in my college times, which I think is when the rot set in, or even much before that, 70s, 60s, बहुत पहले से ये शुरू हो चुका था, but we started seeing the worsening of it. The third stage of this is slightly terminal stage that started in my generation. And now I think it's going in the extreme direction. So, positively speaking, I'm not in this for some kind of a civilizational cause. I'm not in this to act as a savior or a messiah. I'm here only for a selfish, let's say, goal. Tomorrow, if my progeny chooses to study in any of these colleges and schools, is it going to be surrounded and stifled with this kind of bullying nonsense and this kind of cancel culture? I don't want that under any circumstances. So I have a very clear selfish motive here. So contrary to popular opinion, I think there are projections and there's some kind of, I'm sorry, there's some public videos also. There's zero interest in any of it. I have zero interest in any of it. It's a complete waste of time. And I think the very point of my message is lost when people make such videos. The point is not to become a popular figure. The point is to initiate conversations in campuses. And that, I think, because this is supposed to be perhaps the most beautiful part of our journeys. And I think it's filled with poison, completely with poison. And I'm trying to somehow initiate conversations so that people cancelling each other is replaced with people hearing out each other. And having the guts to accept defeat on a public podium if you have proven wrong. That is Bharatiya philosophy. That is our debating concept. Humility and confidence is that जब शास्त्रार्थ हो और आपकी पराजय होती है तो स्वीकार कीजिए. But here it is a problem of competing narratives. ये यहाँ पे चिल्लाते जाएंगे, वो वहाँ पे चिल्लाते जाएंगे, and all you have is just noise all over the place. Nothing else. I don't see what constructive attitudes can come out of this. So the book is not specifically speaking a look at the Constitution. That is just one aspect of it. A significant portion of the book, or the ideas collected in the book, were in my head when I made the switch from engineering to law. The only thing is, अगर आपके पास political science का training नहीं है, या फिर history का एक qualification नहीं है, then you have to give yourself some time to gather enough experience, which can perhaps, hopefully, be a reasonable substitute for a professional degree or qualification. So I was waiting for the right opportunity. And fortunately, the move to law exposed me to several points and several perspectives, which gave me decent substitutes for a professional qualification in both political science and history. And therefore, I've clearly said that I have not even tried to present myself as remotely an expert on the question of political science or history. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. So I think in December 2021, the Open magazine came out with the choices of some of these leading personalities on their picks of the books of the year. Pratap Mehta or Dr. Pratap Mehta had written to me once the book was out, basically congratulating me upon the book. I certainly didn't expect an email from him. And I hope I'm not violating any rules of confidentiality in disclosing this. Because his email did not say private and confidential, I'd be a lawyer. So, he congratulated me on the book, and his basic question was, why is it that we seem to agree so much on history, but we seem to be on the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as politics is concerned? I said, I'm certainly not concerned about politics. I'm more concerned about the broad framework within which everybody operates. जो अपने आप को left कहता है और जो अपने आप को right कहता है, what is the actual difference between your positions when it comes down to the basics? My opinion has been not too much. At best, it is an ego massage and it becomes an investment of the ego where you think you're better and he thinks he's better. But let's challenge your history. Let me see where you stand. 99% those who call themselves right wing and left wing, they will end up coming to the same point of Indian history. Because that's not their fault. That's what they've been educated in. Or that's what they've been trained in. So the fundamental problem lies there. So Dr. Mehta then in the Open magazine, he selects 5 books, and one of the books that he talks about is my book. I think his analysis of my book in a single sentence is bang on, it's on the point. Where he says it is not original, but it is systematic and does serious work. That's exactly what I've said about the book myself. That I am not presenting anything new as far as 70 to 80% of the book is concerned. I have done what comes naturally to a lawyer, which is collect information from across the board, compare and contrast, and present it as a comprehensive tool in one book, so that it becomes the one-stop shop. And from there, once the chashma is given, I then start applying the chashma to a specific document, namely the Samvidhan of the Constitution. So that's the actual contribution of the book in my limited opinion. Others are welcome to disagree with me. So chapters, or rather sections 1 and 2, which speak of coloniality and civilization, build significantly on what already exists. My contribution, as far as those two sections are concerned, is to introduce those concepts to Indian students and to Indian academia, and basically say, why is it that when the West is looking at these issues and they're willing to recognize that this is the product of their own mindsets, uski charcha Bharat mein kyun nahi hoti? Who's stopping this? So the politics of academia is what I'm focusing on. And from there I start looking at the document called the Constitution, simply because everybody now says that his position is constitutional, whereas the other side's position is unconstitutional. Aisa thodi ho sakta hai. That can't be the way. There must be a certain point where you're clearly wrong and you must be in a position to accept it. So of course that analysis is still work in progress. Until the third book is done, I don't think I'll be in a position to confidently say how much I know and what I don't know. Because in the process of writing the book, I have uncovered layers of my own ignorance. What I thought I knew, what I thought I knew about the Constitution itself, I've managed to know all those layers to a significant extent, and I'm still in the process of doing so. So the purpose of the book was only this: start a serious conversation, a very serious conversation. So the feedback so far has been, if I were to put it this way, it's been on the extremes. Some people have absolutely loved the book for the simple reason that it's written in an academic fashion, thereby giving it the sense of seriousness that it deserves. I was only told yesterday on Instagram that the book is now part of certain competitive examinations. They're asking questions about the book and in relation to and all that. So which means the objective has been achieved to a significant extent. But then there are others who are basically saying, ye kya hai? I have to keep a dictionary to look at this, and I have to do all of this. I mean, I have to keep a pen and paper. I can't read this on a flight. I said, I myself have said, if you read this on a flight, it's an insult to my work. Don't do it. Please don't do it. The purpose of the book, and if members of the left are here, or they're watching me here, here's the challenge. I'm throwing the challenge at the left. I've thrown the gauntlet to the book saying, it's been your position that the non-left does not have intellectual heft. I've thrown the book at your faces. I fundamentally hate bullies and bullying. Anybody does that, I will do exactly what I'm asked not to do. You push me down that path, I will say, come on, now I do it exactly, and the way it hurts you. So some people have a problem when you rub a certain vessel, and they ask me what to do. I take it close to the ear and rub it over and over. So that they become used to this. So the first point was to say, this arrogance that you have, which leads you to believe that there are certain subjects and there are certain preserves which are your paternal property, is no way paternal property. This is not. The irony is, those who believe that knowledge cannot be the exclusive preserve of a particular jati or caste are the first ones to say, we are the guardians of scholarship. So the idea is to basically say, now I call it a hypocrisy, book by book by book. And I will arm this particular generation with arguments in every place, especially on college campuses. So my father was born in 1947, people say that both his children are AK-47s. So the idea is to give as much ammunition as possible, because when I was in this particular phase of my life, My savior was and remains the great Dr. Arun Shori. He must be recognized. He must be recognized. He gave me all the ammunition I needed to deal with those arguments. So if anybody wants to project me as the new age or whatever it is, I'm sorry, I'm still sitting at his feet and learning. I'm sitting at the feet of Sitaram Goel, Ramsuru, Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Bharat Shori, and I'm learning from them and I continue to learn from them. The very first two books that I was exposed to when I was in engineering, when I was at crossroads, wondering what do I want to do? Do I want to be an engineer and run away from this country and chase greener pastures in California and green lights and others? Or do I have to stay here? What is it that I must do? I was given 2 copies, in fact, copies of 2 books. The World of Fathas and Missionaries in India by Dr. Arun Shori. That changed my life effectively. And therefore the idea is that this generation, every generation has a particular idiom in which it talks and it relates to. So perhaps my book is a repackaging of the scholarship of all these stalwarts, but in a language and in an idiom that resonates with this generation. So that's where I stand according to me. So I'm literally a dwarf compared to all these giants. And I have tried to be very honest in what I don't know and what I know as part of the book. So that finally there is some semblance of honesty in acknowledging our limitations in terms of knowledge, what we know and what we don't know, and still you approach from that perspective. Because whether or not I know something, as far as a particular subject is concerned, this much is clear. I believe in the vision of that mad saint who was serving in the bedroom sitting in America, saying, what am I doing here? My people are hungry and dying there. It's Swami Vivekananda. That vision is the only vision that drives me 100%. I may not be able to live to his kind of ideas, but that man goes to the far end of this bhumi, sits on a rock, prays, weeps, meditates, asking for this mother to wake up. Nothing can beat that. Everything else is useless. That is the only thing that I think matters ultimately. Will all this campus politics give you the confidence and the conviction that when it comes down to the crunch and you're supposed to stand up for this bhumi and dharma, do you have the commitment and conviction for it? If it doesn't exist, then all of this is just, I'm sorry to say the word perhaps in Delhi would be chichorandi. So, this is a subject and this is an issue for adults, not kids. You want to talk about this, you want to contribute to this, you want to participate in this, do so with serious responsibility and commitment. And it has its own rewards, it also has its own learning curve. But by the time you're done with that, ईंट की हड्डी इतनी मजबूत हो जाती है that you don't give a damn about how many people are against you, क्योंकि सत्य आपके पक्ष में है, हिस्ट्री आपके पक्ष में है. Why do you need anybody else? Then he's there.
You very humbly said that it's not original. But what you have actually done, you have pointed out a very significant aspect drawing from the biblical rules, the notion of duality. And that idea of binary, which is very much the Western world looks everything from the binary perspective. And here, that is completely opposite. In Indian tradition is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, as you say that. And look into the, I was reading the publication came out from Vivekananda International Foundation on the book itself. And the Kapil Kapoor writing on that, and he is saying that this word is the origin actually like the origin from a Bheda concept. There is no concept of dualism here. So therefore, I think you have touched the actual core of the Western divisive contestation, the idea of violence, because it does not see the world as a whole. And here we are completely from a very different tradition. And I think, but I wonder, when we look into this when we want to retrieve ourselves, we have to go back to our philosophical roots. And then, how do you suggest this is going to happen going back to a roots philosophy?
I don't think I have the what they call the grand unified theory answer for this. I'll try to give you a very specific response. ये पुस्तक करता क्या है? किताब नहीं पुस्तक करता क्या है? It basically says, so in engineering what they do is you have a design flowchart. The first thing that you do as part of any design flowchart is identification and definition of the problem. And from there you proceed to, it's called the Euler's design flowchart, I think. And from there you proceed to how to operate and work on the solution. And then you try and create a feedback loop, and there's an iteration over and over and over again until you arrive at a solution which is optimal. What this book does is that it first identifies a problem which is not unique either to the left or the right, but is all purpose. And therefore it says, आप सबने एक चश्मा पहन रखा है, because of which you end up arriving at the same conclusion more or less. At best there are some infinitesimal differences, or minimal differences between your positions. But when it comes down to the basics, there's not much that has changed. So the first thing is the identification of the problem. The problem is coloniality. So Upaniveshvad is one thing, but the other is Upaniveshikta. So Vad is ism, Ta is iti. So coloniality is different from colonialism. So colonialism therefore translates to policy, whereas coloniality translates to, because it's Upaniveshikta, it is Mansikta. Right? So therefore you're focusing on the mind. Once you acknowledge that particular problem, then the question is, आपका उद्देश्य क्या है? Because some people have misread the book and said he wants to bring back Varnashram Dharma, he wants to bring back Sati Pratha, he wants to bring back Shuvachut and all that. Well, in fact, I think specifically on page number 144 of the book, I said no, that's not the point. It's impossible even if you wanted to. First of all, it's not going to happen, right? The question is what? Today there is a which would have the direct impact of reducing this self-loathing attitude. Okay, that's one. And from there I say, चाहे वो इतिहास हो या फिर literature हो or any other place or any other subject. Since I don't have the subject matter knowledge, it is for subject matter experts in each of these departments or fields to acknowledge the existence of the problem in their respective fields और वहाँ से मार्ग कैसे प्रशस्त करना है ये वो निश्चय करेंगे. On the basis of what is, let's say, indigeneity as far as Bharat is concerned on these subjects. I'll give you some example. You speak of political science. We start with Weber's philosophy, everybody's philosophy, but Bharatiya darshan on what is Rajadharma rarely finds any mention. So it starts with, okay, why don't we take a look at that idea first? So I was introduced to this fantastic book by this Sri Lankan Tamil of Indian origin, Anand Kumar Swami. Students of political science must read him, where he comes out with brilliant ideas on what is the Indian conception of state authority. You should read that. And of course, there's an 18-volume treatise written in Shuddha Taste Hindi by Devendra Suruji on the Samvithan of the Constitution. I'm reading that, all of that as part of my writing of the second and third books. So the idea is, जब भी कोई मुद्दा या इशू आपके सामने प्रेजेंट होता है, your go-to office अटलांटिक के इस पार क्या होता है, अटलांटिक के उस पार क्या होता है, यूएस में क्या होता है, यूके में क्या, आप अंदर क्यों नहीं देखते? Why don't you? It's such a rich civilization. Surely there have been solutions that we have come out with. How do you contemporize it? That's the first thing. So that sage speak I apply to my area, saying that संविधान के बारे में मुझे जितनी थोड़ी बहुत knowledge है, I will now apply this philosophy or this, as usual, Savarna, Bhavapati, factorizing and all that. In the process, book का तो मतलब progress हो गया. I actually want Indian Address to say that thank her for the publicity that she's given to the book. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. But she, मतलब छप्पर पढ़ के ऐसा कि वो only to Bharat. Now US people are reading this. Over the last 5 to 6 months, this book has been in the top 10 on the Kindle reading list of Constitution of the United States. What do you mean by that? At least 50% of the credit must go to Priyanka And the response always works in my favor. Which is to say that, coming back to the topic, the idea has been that please, अपने subjects में इस चश्मे को पहनने की कोशिश करें. Try and do that. So this generation, if it starts this particular journey, हो सकता है कि इसी जनरेशन में इन सवालों का जवाब, इन प्रश्नों का उत्तर ना मिले. बट आपने सवाल करना शुरू कर दिया है, which is the most important. So every time Arjun asks a long question during the Gita Sar, Krishna says, पहले सवाल को तो ठीक करो, reframe the question, he goes on saying that. So our job here is to first not answer the question, but to reframe the question itself. Okay? So if I were asked, can I have some kind of prescription as far as the constitution is concerned, I would say I need another 5 to 6 years before I can clearly say स्वतंत्र संविधान कैसे दिखना चाहिए. बट उससे पहले मुझे ये तो एनालिसिस कर देना चाहिए, I should come to this conclusion कि ये जो संविधान है वो स्वराज्य भारत का है लेकिन स्वतंत्र नहीं है. There is no clear distinction between. I have not come to the conclusion yet because I am still in the process of understanding. जिस दिन इन प्रश्नों का मेरे पास क्लियर कट उत्तर होगा तब मैं बोलूँगा वेरी क्लियरली कि संविधान में प्रॉब्लम क्या है, बिकॉज ऑफ विच भारत की जो नेटिव आइडियोलॉजीज है, नेटिव दर्शन है और जो सिस्टम्स हैं उनका क्या हशर होगा. आई कम टू द वेरी क्लियर कंक्लूजन. सो द ट्रिलॉजी, द भारत ट्रिलॉजी इज एफेक्टिवली माय मास्टर टेम्पलेट व्हिच इज सारे ब्रॉड आर्गुमेंट्स जो है पहले से निकाल दिए. इसको मैं नींव बना के, फाउंडेशन बना के, I will continue to build on this particular idea as long as possible until I reach the end of this particular argument. So they say, recently a good friend of mine ended up making this fantastic comment. किसी भी तर्क को डिस्कस करने से पहले, उसको निकालने से पहले, you must inhabit the argument before you discuss it. Which is to say, you enter the argument first, then search for internal inconsistency. मेरे prejudices हैं, thanks to my political beliefs, my ideological beliefs, उन सबको साइड में रखें. I'm just looking at what has happened in terms of facts, and from there I'll see, okay, what is the impact, what is the impact, what is the impact. So this long-winded answer to your short question is, this is as the Delhi road construction tells you frequently, कार्य प्रगति नहीं. It's work in progress. Easy.
Your book actually, it's a kind of methodology. I think it brings how to approach an issue. And that is the biggest contribution to start thinking.
100%, because there what I have done is that I have brought my training as a lawyer to the forefront. Which is to say, कोई भी मेरे facts को अगर dispute कर पाए, I challenge them. I have said this in multiple cases. So usually what they do is that, as I said in multiple cases, a strategy that I applied in the book. Primary sources को correction के तौर पे या फिर appendix में आप उसको जोड़ देते हैं और कोई उसको पढ़ता नहीं, nobody reads it. But in such an important book, or at least in such an important initiative, where I'm trying to say, भाई इनकी सोच ही ऐसी थी. If I were to say, they'll say this is your interpretation. I said no, let the horse speak. This is the horse's mouth. This is what it says. We've been saying this over and over and over again from 15th century till the 22nd, 21st century. This has been the position over and over again. So you have said what I wanted to say and made my job easier. So the bulk of the book, initially the book was about 1,55,000 words, and then after touring out it came to 1,59,000 words. 40 to 35% of the book is only extracts. Made my job brilliantly easy. I just had to extract and then add my point. अब सोच लो. Here's the extract, अब देख लो. ये क्या है भाई? मुझे कुछ कहने की जरूरत ही नहीं है. They're proving my point. So once I start with the second book, take it from me. Second book, I say this hopefully with the God's above as my witness. The second book will connect everything that happened in the 17th and 18th centuries and draw parallels कि भारत में subcontinent में जितने भी आज के different problems हैं, I will effectively show the one-to-one comparison. Because the first book was largely theory. second book में pattern शुरू हो जाए 100%. And once the second book comes out, people will exactly know what has been happening. Because you see, कोई एक incident होता है तो आप सिर्फ उसको एक बिंदु की तरह देखते हैं. Then there's another बिंदु here, then there's another बिंदु here. जो सबको देखो कि pattern क्या है. So the common pattern of all the three books is going to be that it's going to be a collection of talks in multiple places. And the second book is going to be the same. In fact, my researchers here, what we've done is that after the first book, once we start going through the material for the second book, again, it's a material already thought. Then we realized we have to completely restructure the second book. And you will realize after you read the second book that I was justified in doing this. Take it from me, if the first book is contested, second book will literally set the cap among the pages. Literally they will have to ask इसका अभी जवाब क्या दे? आप ये rights, appeasement की जो बात किए जाते हैं, इसका स्टोरी क्या है, इसकी जो वैल्यू की है, मैं निकाल के रखूँगा किसी भी, and then we'll see what happens.